Welcome one, welcome all into Lions Central Radio. I am Nick Castor, my co-host Brandon Alistiglu, another off-season edition of the program for you folks. This time we're joined by Scott Bischoff. You guys know him hopefully from the program. He's been on many times before. Leading up to the draft, we like to bring Scott in. He's always got great information for us. I'm sure this is only going to be the first of many before the draft in a couple of months. But before we get into the draft stuff with Scott, he's actually just had a recent piece come out from New Era Scouting about Matthew Stafford and his progression and where we should be, the expectation and what it really should be for Stafford at this point. So, Scott, kind of run down what you went through in that piece.
Well, most of it's statistical, and even with all the information that we have, that's a great question because there's a lack of clarity as to what to expect from him.
Yeah.
Like I wrote, he's an enigma. You're going to find lots of people who like him and lots of people who really dislike him. And you know how today's society is. It's either he's the greatest player on the planet or he just sucks. And the reality is that Stafford is greatly shades of gray. So we know Stafford's played for 6 seasons. We know what he is as a player. We know what his strengths are and what his weaknesses are. And it just seemed, and I don't know if you guys felt the same way watching their offense this year, but it seemed like they really went away from what he was good at under what Linehan did with him, which is basically run him out of shotgun and spread everything out. So I just looked at a bunch of the information. It started a couple weeks ago when I looked at the Pro Football Focus numbers about basically how long or how deep the drops were for Stafford, and the numbers are crazy. Like 75% of the drops are either 5-step or 7-step drops for the Lions last year, which is too many. It's too many. It's way too many drops where he's too deep, and that means your offensive line has to hold up. And then you combine that with the Lions being 28th in the NFL with the number of blockers per play. Now, granted, it's marginal. It's a very small percentage. That it's different than the other teams, but still, I mean, they're holding the ball a long time with relatively fewer blockers than 27 other teams, and we have a quarterback who doesn't like pressure, who deals with pressure poorly, probably a little more poorly than the average quarterback. Physical pressure, and I'm not calling him names. He's a very tough player. He makes their decisions that are poor when there's pressure. So you can see his numbers. From 2011, 2012, 2013, his numbers when there's no pressure are very high. His numbers when there is pressure are very low. So it just, to me, as an offense, why are you dropping so deep? Why are you having him hold the ball so long when we know that his strengths are not facing into pressure? And then you throw into the combination of the injuries they had last year. The injuries up front were just crazy. The last 10 games of the season, they played with a different combination of players on the offensive line. The scheme last year really hurt Stafford, and I don't know what they're getting at or where they're going to go with Stafford, but looking at the numbers, it's pretty obvious the scheme is a problem for Stafford, or it was last year, and that led to the regression.
Well, and that's when you sent me that piece today on Twitter and I read it. I'm a pretty big Stafford apologist. At least I've always tried to point out that there just have been some consistent flashes, not just 1 or 2 games, but like the beginning of the 2013 season, that whole first half, he was lights out.
Yeah.
And so you really helped put it in perspective that, and I knew he wasn't great with pressure. None of them are. It's usually the way you beat him. But you're right. I think his dip is a little more than most. But it was really interesting to see that Lombardi just kind of refused to change up that scheme, even with all those injuries on the offensive line. I guess if I was going to turn this into more of a question for you, do you think this is something? I guess I had to think how to phrase this because there were plenty of gripes about Lombardi's play calling maybe being too easy to figure out before, but is this indicative of a coach who can't seem to get out of his own way?
I hope not. I don't have. I don't have an answer. Looking at the New Orleans offense, when they didn't get real good offensive line play, Drew Brees struggles too. So
yep.
It's the same offense. So or similar enough that you can look at the history there.
Right, and that's kind of, and I guess it was unfair because I asked you a question that there's no way to have an answer to it yet, and that's, I guess I mean it more as a rhetorical question. Then that's a concern that it was already going to be discussed, but this kind of evidence, this actually putting it into numbers perspective, well, it's a little scary. I'm sure there are plenty of, well, I don't know if there are plenty of people that listen to the show, but I'm sure a good number of them that do probably cheer on Michigan on Saturdays, and they've seen a guy come in with a new system and not try to change that scheme around. It didn't go so well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. We don't really know what the end game is for Lombardi and what he's trying to achieve. Year one was tough. I would hope that, instead of looking at it critically and being worried about the future, I would say that there are reasons to be very hopeful about what Stafford can be. Meaning, put him in a, that's one of the issues that I think coaches struggle with is trying to force square pegs into round holes kind of thing.
Yep.
Stafford is what he is. He's going to be streaky. He's going to be a little bit inconsistent at times. There are going to be times when we're going to, when you're going to look back at a game and you're going to say, yeah, he left 50 or 100 yards on the field and they could have scored another 10 points in that game. But he's good enough. And,
right.
He's good enough to take them where they need to go. It's just, if you look at his numbers when there's relatively little pressure, the numbers are phenomenal. So, to me, I'm looking at that, and I'm hoping that the Lions find a way to get the ball out quicker this coming season. One of the problems, and it leads to a bigger question, is what do you do with Calvin? Because Calvin's one of those long developing route runners, and the combination of what Stafford's good at and what Calvin's good at might not mesh well together down the road. I don't know if that makes sense, but it could be a problem. We might see them go to more Golden Tate type players who can get open quickly if they're trying to get the ball out quicker. But that's speculation. I don't know.
Well, and they're obviously going to be paying that premium from Calvin Johnson for another 3 years. There's not much they can do about it. But yeah. I guess we'll try to move it to a little bit of a happier question to keep everybody on the hook here. You're a draft guy. You have, I believe, New Era Scouting. That's your you founded that. That's your shindig. You also write for footballguys.com, if I'm not mistaken. I got those right.
That's fantasy stuff. The most important is doing the college scouting for GM Junior, which working with Russ Landy is. That's the big thing.
I knew there was another draft credit on there for you. So, as far as specifically for Detroit. If you could paint a best-case scenario for them for, say, like the first 3 rounds, whether it be specific guys or maybe the positions they could target, and that would be a great setup to this draft, how would you see that going?
Tell me what's going to happen with Sue first.
They sign him. I always operate under the assumption he's signing. I know it's probably a cocky. I just think that. I believe that deal is going to get done. It's
such a giant deal that we have to. I mean, we almost have to answer this question twice.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? But we'll answer it as if Sue's here, and that's the best case scenario because there are no defensive tackles in this draft. And I mean, in all fairness to Sue, there just aren't any players really around who are really going to do the things that he does. I mean, Leonard Williams is a very, very good defensive tackle, but he's undersized. He's not Sue. Sue is one of those rare cats who he's just different than a lot of guys, and if you lose him, you're almost looking at kind of rebuilding a little bit because it changes things. I'm not saying it changes things from it's going to take them to a bad team. It really changes what they're going to have to do and what their identity is on defense. But we talked before the show. I think one of the things that really helps is drafting in the back part of this first round in this class because the top 10, 15 players just hasn't gelled yet. Nobody really knows. I mean, I think everybody has a feeling of what kind of players they like, but
right.
It's crazy. So in an effort not to try to not talk too much, I just what I mean. I'll get carried away. I think we're looking at a player like Riley Reif that's going to fall to them at the 23 pick. a player who is a good football player, who might be a guy like Brandon Scherf, who might slip a little because everybody's going to look at the short arms and just assume he can't play tackle. He'd be a great player here. He'd be a fantastic player because not only does he offer you a guy who can play tackle, but you can kick him inside because of his mentality at the position, and he could be a really good guard. I do not think he would be available. I just don't. I just think he's too good a player. But you're looking at a situation like that where you're going to have a player who's a good football player fall to you. Eric Flowers is a tackle from Miami of Florida. He is a good football player. He's 20 years old. So he's going to be 25 after his rookie deal is up. I think he's got left tackle feet. He's got long arms. He's a big kid, and he's a 20-year-old kid he's gonna grow and he's gonna get a little bit stronger. But he's got everything you want at the tackle position. Yeah, I mean, I would think that priority one would probably be offensive line. There's a chance that a corner will be at that spot that they can't pass up, like a P.J. Williams or a Trey Waynes or a player like that. There's some question marks with some of the other kids, but I think that's kind of what you're looking at is a player who's going to fall for some reason, and a guy who's just going to be a very good football player is going to fall to them and play for a while for them.
Well, Scott, you hit on Eric Flowers there, and there's a couple of guys, Andrews Pete, T.J. Clemmings, and we looked at Eric Flowers as well. Of those three, do you have a favorite when looking at them?
Repeat the three. I know you mentioned Flowers. Who are the other two?
Andrews Pete and T.J. Clemmings from Pitt.
Out of the three, I think I would prefer Flowers, but it's more preference than it's more style maybe than substance. Pete's a good player. Clemmings is a good player. I think I like Flowers. I like his age. He's only 20 years old. I think he's got more developing to do. You know what I mean? I mean, he's. Mm-hmm. I think that he could fit really nicely into his own system right now, because if there's a knock on him, it's a little bit that there's some core strength issues. But to be honest, I don't see a lot of that. I think he's a very good player. I like him as a player more than Pete and more than Clemmings. But that's again, it's more of a what's your preference for the players out of that position. I think that his ability to play left tackle down the road is probably a little higher than certainly for Clemmings. I think Clemmings might be a right tackle guy. A little bit similar to what Gosder Charles was. Pete's a good player. He's very aggressive. We've got him graded very highly. But for me, it's Flowers over those guys. But I could make a case for all three of them, to be honest. It's preference as to what you really like and what you're looking for out of the player. I mean, I think Pete might be the better player right now, but the ceiling might be a little higher on a guy like Flowers.
Well, and just shifting gears to the quarterback position, and we talked about Stafford earlier, but behind him on the depth chart last year it was Dan Orlovsky. Just not with the uncertainty behind him in this draft class. If you're watching SportsCenter or what have you, you're only going to hear the two names, Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota. But deeper in this class, are there quarterbacks that intrigue you that could be potential backups in this league that would fit in nicely on the Lions depth chart?
No. I mean, yeah, there is, but those are they're guys that you would consider really, really late. I mean, there's a kid from Colorado State Pueblo. His name is Chris Bonner, and he's a big kid, and he can rip it. I mean, he intrigues me more than, for example, anybody I saw live at the Senior Bowl. It was Blake Sims and Bryce Petty, and it was a mess. Garrett Grayson from Colorado State. None of those guys were. I mean, I thought Grayson was the best one during the week, but I don't know that I would spend a 5th or 6th round pick on any of those guys. Clearly they have to upgrade over Orlovsky. I think that this thing would fall apart if Orlovsky were to have to play for them. So I mean, they're going to have to figure it out. But there'll be a lot of moving pieces in free agency where maybe you could upgrade over Orlovsky. But they like him. Certainly, I don't think that's going to be a priority for them.
And just if you're looking, and a lot of our listeners are, if you're looking past the top of the draft, maybe guys later in the draft that you think fit what Detroit could be, and you can take this to whatever position you're thinking, but when you look deeper in this class, is there a name or a couple that really excite you?
Yeah, there's a few. Duke Johnson, I think, is going to surprise people in a negative way by how small he is. Meaning I think he's gonna be like 5'8" and 205 pounds, maybe 205. But he is so electric as a ball carrier. For a little player, he runs it inside really nice. Between the tackles, he's very aggressive. He's a home run hitter. To me, he's a very similar player, but functionally better than Javid Best was. Javid Best was a home run hitter, and was a player who you could really take advantage of on the edge of the defense. Duke Johnson will do that, but he's also going to run the ball inside and be a full workload type of player more than Javid Best ever was. So to me, he's really intriguing in the second round, and I know that it's a position that they need to look at. There is a center from Florida State, Cameron Irving. I believe he will go very early. So I mean, it doesn't really fit into what the question was because he'll be gone early. Mm-hmm. But and he's a center, so I think people would lose their minds. But he's a player that really changes. He's going to change an offensive line for some team because of how athletic he is and the things that he's able to do from the center position, things that we have never seen. Because Raiola simply can't do the things that athletically Irving can do. There's a tackle from Wisconsin, Rob Havenstein. I think as you're getting into the draft, he'd be a nice player, right tackle only kind of player, but a big kid who can move. Philip Dorsett is Duke Johnson's teammate at Miami of Florida. He's a 5'10", 185-pound receiver, but he is so fast. I get from him. I kind of feel like he's what Brandon Cooks is supposed to be. He runs the full route tree. He does everything that you want your receivers to do, but he does everything full speed. He's going to run in the 4.2s from what we're told. Apparently, he ran a 4.21 in the spring and was hand-timed at 4.18. So, I mean, he's going to run really, really fast. He would be a player that when you get into the mid part of the draft, that's a player who could really bring some value to your offense and as a returner, which is something they need too. So, I mean, that's the thing is they're going to get, between, say, rounds 1 because they're picking at 23 and round 4, they're going to get very good players in in those rounds, and guys who can come in and help. So it's just kind of another one is Laken Tomlinson, the guard from Duke. I think he's a good player. He can play left guard for them, and it's certainly a position they need to look at with Rob Sims kind of having a down year and just not playing very good last year.
Well, it's got you've brought a ton of, as always, a ton of knowledge regarding all these prospects to us, and some of them people probably heard, some of them obviously they haven't. But is there anybody in that day 3? Obviously, Detroit's had a little bit of luck with undrafted free agents lately. Is there anybody in that day 3 / undrafted free agent, just a guy that nobody's talking about that maybe he played because he played at a small school or he just didn't play a lot at a big school that has a chance to contribute next season? That could be somebody that's another Adrian Waddle type situation.
Oh man, that's tough.
Yeah, I know it's real early in the game to be busting out those questions, but I thought I'd give it a shot.
I mean, it's a good question because that's you get so much value out of an undrafted free agent who can come in and play for you. Like maybe Mickey Baucus, a tackle from Arizona, could fit that category. I mean, you're talking about players who get overlooked for really crazy reasons, like Cornelius Lucas last year, who they got in the draft. Or I'm sorry, got as a free agent. I don't know why he wasn't drafted. It doesn't quite make a whole bunch of sense. I mean, there are very few 6'8", 320-pound guys with long arms who can move. That's the kind of stuff that you're looking for. I think that in this class, much like we saw last year with some of the corners and some of the safeties. I can't remember the kid's name. The Osprey. Just the athletes who don't get a lot of credit. There's a defensive tackle from Fresno State. His name is Tyler Davidson. He could come in and help. And I don't know whether he's going to get drafted or not. There's another kid from Oklahoma State whose name, for some reason, his name is escaping me. I wish I knew his name. His last name's Castleman. He's a very good player. I saw him at the Shrine game, and he can come in and help. But these are guys who sort of get passed because they may be tweeners and they may not fit the 34 defensive tackle mold or defensive end mold, and they don't fit into the 43 system because they might be a little undersized. But guys who can get through gaps and guys who can help. That's a tough question. It really is. It's so we just don't know really what's going to happen in the draft. But there'll be players. There's always, if you look at the last few years, there's always undrafted free agents who matter and come in and help. So they'll get somebody. It's just that's a good question. I don't really have an answer for it. You guys there?
Yep, and sorry about that, Scott. But and with that and those later guys, we'll be able to talk with you hopefully more leading up to the draft. This won't be our last conversation. We hopefully will be able to talk more about specific positional breakdowns with you. We'd love to go over the top corners, the top D linemen in the class, and things like that. Yeah. So, but with that. For this session, at least, thank you so much for coming on the program and taking the time. On Twitter, he is at Bischoff _ Scott, and definitely check out his stuff at New Era Scouting. The piece that I referenced at the top of the show about Matthew Stafford is definitely worth a look, and we'll tweet it out after the broadcast from our handle as well. So, again, thank you for coming on, Scott.
Thanks, and we'll talk to you guys soon. You guys be good. Thanks.
All right, thanks,
absolutely.
Scott. Bye. Man, I'm having all sorts of technical troubles on my side today. Cat kicked me off. I was just speaking and I couldn't get the volume back up.
Well, one of us will keep it professional at all times. It fluctuates which one of us has those technical difficulties.
Yeah. Well, that's why we got two of us. As always, I was Scott Bischoff bringing some information, giving a little draft primer. I mean, there's so many names and so many people to come up yet that, well, it's really hard to target what's going to happen. But in your world, Nick, a certain guy did get targeted straight off Detroit Lions coaching staff there. Are you excited about CMU's new head coach, former special team coordinator for the Lions, John Bonamego?
Yes, the chips are certainly firing up tonight. John Bonamego, yeah, we've talked about him before on the podcast. We've had a couple of the special teams guys we've had a chance to interview, and they've all talked highly of Bonamego. He is actually a CMU grad. He's going back for the first time to be a head coach there. I'm very excited as a CMU alum just because they've never actually had a coach that was an alumni before. So as someone that actually loves and respects the program for what it is. It is a MAC school, I get that. But it's a fun hire for Central. He's a good special teams coach. I mean, Detroit's going to have to go out and fill the spot. It shouldn't be too hard to do. But
well, they have one now. It looks like. I don't know if they've actually. Joe Marciano from Houston.
And what was his role there?
That's the same. He was the special teams
coached one.
Yeah. Well, he was with the Houston Texans, so he was interim special teams coordinator last year, and he with Minnesota last year, and 2002 to 2013 Houston Texans. Special teams coordinator. So long time there, and he hasn't been named yet. This is Tuesday evening. It looks like it's imminent. I saw a 5 questions SB Nation. I don't know if you've ever seen those before. How they do that? They do 5 questions with whatever blog that they're playing usually. So in this case, they did it with Battle Red blog, the Houston Texans blog. Some of the highlights. Houston special teams under Marciano were almost impressively awful. We couldn't protect, we couldn't block, we couldn't tackle, we couldn't stop getting penalties on damn near every kick and punt. Seriously, I'm not kidding.
Wow.
This might be my favorite. On the flip side, were there any strengths that emerged on special teams under Marciano other than improved draft position? So I don't know what we're looking at here. The thing I will say is that never throughout this piece do they mention any stats. There's just a lot of, I don't know, it seems like fanboy yelling. Who knows how bad or good they were. I didn't have time to look it up beforehand. I just saw it before we went on the air. But I don't find that very encouraging.
Yeah. Okay, the official, not official, but the report was from Sports Illustrated that Marciano had signed, and then a Lions spokesman said on Saturday night that there was nothing to report, and there's been nothing new since then. So hopefully by next week we can bring you official word on the signing, as exciting or not there exciting that it actually is. But we'll have more details when we and we'll bring them to you on Facebook and Twitter and all that when we do have them on that position. We'll also bring you whatever news we have on Ndamukong Suh as slowly as they come in. Our listeners may remember from last offseason we waited patiently, ever so patiently, all offseason for Ndamukong Suh news. We started the Suh Watch, as a matter of fact, and that watch continues now. The latest rumors don't surround the Detroit Lions, actually surround the Seattle Seahawks, where there's a rumor that that's where Suh would like to go, even though they have less cash than just about anyone in the league. So that doesn't seem like it's even possible. But
it's not happening.
Yeah, and also Ndamukong Suh's house. The rumor is that it's for sale. You said you saw per Dave Burkett that it's actually not even listed.
Yeah, it's I don't know where that rumor came from. I don't. There's certain sources that I'm not sure I understand, or if they have sources, but there appears to be no Ndamukong Suh listing on the in the places you would list a house, particularly the MLS. So for now, I'm not going to worry about it too much. I do want to bring up though that going forward with the draft, that we're going to start premiering a piece that we're pretty excited about. It's going to be called Prospects for the Pride, where we bring on an analyst each week. They're going to be separate videos, though, that we're going to drop in probably right here. So if you're listening in MP3 version, we're going to have a nice little transition, or it's just going to drop right in. You'll find out. But otherwise, we're going to have separate videos just on that with the prospect name and the analyst and him just going in about how much he likes his prospects, why Detroit needs to add him, and things like that. So be on the lookout for that, just like Suh's house, because, well, one's actually going to happen. We'll see if the other one does.
Yeah, we will, of course, stay on top of the Ndamukong Suh situation, but we are just not expecting much movement on that front, other than, I guess, the thing we can report on this is that he's officially no longer under contract to the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, that's about it, and I think that's about all you're going to see for quite a while. I don't expect him to franchise him, as we talked about last week. If you folks, we've been starting to get some more discussion going on the Facebook page. We love it. We made sure to install the appropriate apps, so as soon as you hit us up, we're getting the notifications, trying to get that conversation going. So you can find us find the show on Facebook at Lions Central Radio. You can find the show on Twitter at Lions Central PFC. You can find me personally on Twitter at Brandon Elisoglu. That's ALISOGLU. And you can find Nick Kostora on Twitter at Nick Kostora, KOSTORA.
A lot of exciting stuff coming up on the show, guys. Brandon hinted at the prospects for the Pride. We're also going to go across the pond and talk to a big football fan from London. So just some real cool stuff going on. Be sure to stay tuned. We're coming to you each and every week here in the off season, bringing you news that we don't think you're going to be able to get anywhere else. So very excited for all of it. Until next time, for Brandon Elisoglu, I am Nick Kostora. Thank you so much for tuning in to Lions Central Radio.